Welcome to the ALTIS Podcast. I'm your host, Stu McMillan. In this series, I'm sitting down with speakers and contributors to the upcoming ALTIS Speed Summit, brought to you by 3x4 Genetics, which is taking place in Chicago, June 6th, 7th, and 8th. Thank you, as always, to our sponsors, 3x4 Genetics, Stat Sports, 1080 Sprint, Team Builder, and brand new sponsor, Output Sports, for making this event possible. If you haven't yet secured your ticket, head on over to altus.world. Today's episode is a pretty cool one, actually. I was joined by Sean Muldoon. Sean is the former head of performance for the Seattle Sounders and is the driving force behind the Speed Summit structure and design. He first reached out to me a few years ago, actually, to kind of co-do something, like do something like this. And it took us a couple of years to put it together, but and it's now in fruition. And as I said, it's coming to you this spring or this summer. Sean has spent years working in high performance environments, but I feel like what sets him apart is his deep commitment to rethinking how we learn, mentor, and prepare for this profession. We talked about education, not just in the formal sense, but how we develop ourselves as coaches. We asked big questions about why and what and what's broken in education and maybe what can come next. And also, what can you do if you're stuck? As always, I started by asking him, what does he do and why does he do it?
Yeah, so what I do is coach high performers, period. And why I do it, my mission in life is to lead principled people and harness the power of self-belief. Like that's the thing that I'm driven by, and the ways that I can express it, I found coaching is the purest form for me. So I coach high performers.
What are high performance? Define that for me. What do you mean by that?
People who are psycho about their craft, people that want to be excellent at what they do. That could be in the sports world, that could be in the business world, that could be selling insurance, that could be and being a parent. It doesn't really matter. People that say this is what I do and it matters a great deal to me, so I want to be really good at this thing. To me, that's a high performer. It's not.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, not tied to any particular industry, but more about a care of the craft. Like, this is who I am and what I do, and I want to be really good at what I do.
When did you come to that? Like, we're always asking ourselves, why do we do it, right? People who ask those questions anyway, or are continually asking ourselves those things. Now, if I'd asked you that question 10 years ago, you might have had a slightly different answer. You were doing something slightly different.
Yeah.
Your why was still the same, but again, it was a slightly different population of people that you're working with. So how did you come to the realization that was important to you, or that was your why? High performers, full stop, not high performers who also happen to be elite athletes.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, so my 15-year journey in sports, I was always agnostic about the sport. Like I ran track, so I selfishly love track the most and think it's the best, and it did a lot for me. But as my career, I actually never really cared what sport it worked with. And because of that, I always felt like an outsider when I was working with basketball. I'm like, yeah, I like it. There's some really interesting challenges, some amazing parts to it, but they're unique to basketball, and then soccer has their own. And so for me, as I went through my career, recognizing I actually always felt like the outsider, and it took me to realize that the commonality was the high performing piece. And then when I was able to be comfortable enough to recognize it actually doesn't apply to sports. It was when I spent time with other people completely out of our industry, and I was like, oh yeah, that excites me. And I think about that as much in the same way that I cared about working in soccer for a really long time. It was, oh no, people who are really psycho, I'm really drawn to those people. And it just took me enough time to be confident that I actually could apply my craft somewhere else, and that it was needed and I enjoyed it, right? Because I thought, oh, okay, as an athlete, I'm down this path and it's really important that I stay on this path because that's the only way to express myself. And actually it's not, it's just an area that I love, and there's a lot of them.
Do you feel like your experience as a coach working with high performer athletes, obviously you're going to say yes to this, but how did that serve you in what you do now with not necessarily the athletic population? Then talk to me about that transition, because
Yeah.
I feel like there would be quite a bit of trepidation there. All right, I've worked in sport for X amount of years. I'm pretty good at this, but I know that this doesn't define me. The high performance piece is the thing I'm really, you know, super interested with and in, but I don't want to be stuck in sport anymore.
Yeah.
But what did it look like? All right, can I do this with a corporate population or a general population? Like talk me through that transition and what gave you the confidence that you could do that.
Yeah. I mean, first, yes, coaching for sure helped prepare me for that. Coaching athletes in sport helped prepare me, but like that's my unique angle to it, right? Some people go through MBAs and PhDs, and that's their angle. And some exit 10 businesses, and that's their angle. Like everybody has their own unique path. And it was like mine happened to be sports that come to a lot of the same conclusions from folks in completely separate places. And so like that was just my path because that was the journey that I was on, and how I always identified. So for me, it really became the task of being able to help other people translate my experiences the same way. And it's really easy when you're like, okay, I went to get my MBA at University of Chicago Booth. So now working in business makes a lot of sense because that's a very respected business school. And for me, just really helping other people connect those dots, that when we talk about influencing others, that's not defined to just sports or business or other places, or managing egos, or dealing with conflict, or establishing a personal set of values and mission, right? Like things that are part of cultures that we do in sport and people do in other places. And so just really being able to connect those dots. And then what gave me the confidence to do that is I tend to be a really confident person in general. Like that's not the area that I lack in. I'm a risk taker. I jump into things and I believe that I can do it. And sometimes I fall on my face for sure. It has happened, but I never actually questioned, oh, okay, do my skills translate? I knew they did. I just had to connect with the other people that met me. They're like, oh, actually, I'm really intrigued by someone in sports where like I don't know all the business lingo, right? I'm not, and I can't share that. But what I can share is like, okay, we talk about pressure moments, right? And a performance review every single Saturday when we lose a game, someone is dealing with that, right? Like I have to deal with the expectations from the other world. So I can talk to people in business about dealing with pressure moments, right? That's transferable. Just so being able to like separate and then also connect how experience in sports, like they are so, it is the same thing. We just, our widget is a little bit different. Rather than running fast, we're talking about, delivering sales, but actually it's all very much the same. And so I always felt confident that I could do it. It was just how can I identify the other people that are attracted to someone like me who is not have the same background as other people. And that's a lot of no's and a lot of like hard conversations. We're like, oh, that's cool. Like, you didn't say exactly the right thing. So, you know, we'll pass you over and look at somebody else.
Do you feel like sport and working in sport gave you some unique abilities in this sense as well, that maybe if you'd gone to business school and went down a more traditional route that you wouldn't have gained? And do the people that you work with now, do
Um,
they recognize those types of abilities?
I think sport absolutely does. I think it prepares us and it prepared me in so many ways of like getting pressure tested every day, right? Like athletes and teams, like they call me if I have a bad day, if I'm off, if I'm not like sharp, like they call it. There's no like coasting
Mm.
for me. Like and that's normal, right? Working hard long days, like that's a pretty normal thing that people in performance like expect. So there's a lot of these like baked in experiences that taking them and translating them to like corporate space or business it's like a superpower, to be honest. Like, oh my gosh, like starting work at 9, I'm like, that's like it feels like I'm missing half the day because I'm so used to at least being on call with somebody preparing for a meet. Like there's some other thing that sport has always. So I'm like, wow, oh, okay. Like I can actually get a lot done. And I think that is a very common piece that regardless of the level, college, private, professional, like we got to show up and put in a shift and work hard, right? Like that's a given. And there's a lot of those dealing with pressure, right? I mean, again, there's so many. So, yeah, it for sure is helpful. And there are definitely people that recognize that when I'm like, man, I'm not even like delivering that well. I'm just showing up. Like this is easy because again, sports forces to me, the games like force a constant review and reflection and there's this process of reevaluating versus that same level of turnover isn't as common, at least in my experience so far, where it's like you're not delivering a product or releasing something as every week or multiple times a week, right? So I think being in spaces where people are like, oh yeah, there's definitely something easy about it for me, and people recognize that like the there's a reason people like to hire former athletes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like time management is like such a thrown out, but like that's a real skill that is massively developed from a lifetime of sport.
Mm-hmm. Um, what is your experience? I can tell you mine, but what is
Yeah.
your experience around, you probably, a lot of people who work in sport. We both do. And we hear this a lot of coaches who kind of just get stuck in a rut a little bit.
Yeah.
They're a coach. As you said, they're working in soccer. Then they get pigeonholed as a soccer performance coach or whatever. And then, if you're good enough and you're smart enough and you can lead, maybe become a performance director. And that's kind of it. It's like
Yeah.
people end up maybe drifting a little bit and doing things that maybe if they had the choice right now, they might do something differently.
Yeah.
And you're a really good example of somebody that says, yeah, you know what? I have a choice and I'm going to make the choice to do something a little bit differently. And, many of those people, start working in or with more of a general population, uh, kind of population, not necessarily in sport anymore, but still working in
Yeah.
movement or health or fitness or whatever.
Yeah.
Many are just go and do something different. You know what I mean? They just get sick of the whole thing because of much of it. I guess what I'm trying to get, like, what would be your advice to folks like that are just kind of feel like they're just stuck and don't feel like many of these abilities that they have and that what they've developed over their 5 or 10 years or 15 years in sport do transfer to something else. So you're obviously, living proof that it does.
Yeah. To me, that like comes down to like values, like having a personal set of values. Like I have 5 C's that I live by, and any decision I make, anything personal relationships, professional, like if it hits those 5 C's, I know I'm actually pretty good. And it was like my ego for most of my career that was like, oh, I have to work with the best athlete at the best club, and win all the like these external pieces and then doing those, I'm like, man, that actually doesn't do it for me. Because A, if I didn't win it, I just wasted 11 months and I feel bad because I'm like, now I'm a failure. I didn't do my one thing. Um, but having the set of values, if it checks that box, then ultimately there's a lot more fulfillment. Like one of my C's is competition, right? That's a hard thing for me to find at work to be healthy and a productive member of a team. But like I play pickup basketball every single Thursday. That checks that box where I'm like, it's a bunch of dads. We play after our kids go to sleep and I talk shit the whole time. I get to run around and I'm like, oh, okay, that checks that box. I don't need my job to check that box because I'm fulfilled as a person. Like I have, and same thing with these other pieces. So when people feel stuck, maybe I think I identify that of like, well, why did you get into the field to begin with? Like, what is that? What is that piece? I mean, to your initial question, like, why are you show up for this thing?
Yeah.
And when that's not being translated, how do you find other ways to do it? right? And like there are a million ways. Like I said, my vehicle and most of us happen to be sports to express something that mattered to us, but being able to connect with like uh, someone in a completely separate industry, and you're like, whoa, this person is really intense. They like obsess over every detail. Like to me, that's really attractive. I'm like, oh, okay, tell me more about, the senior living space that I know nothing about, but you have 200 employees that report to you. Man, that's got to be a lot of pressure. That's a lot of people looking to you to lead them. Like, what is that like? Like, and it to me, it ends up scratching that same itch. And so to having the curiosity to see, okay, well, what is the thing I need scratched, right? Is it a big challenge? Is it someone that cares about me or me expressing care for someone else? Again, is it competition? Is it a connection? I just need human connection with someone where we can like talk about something like what are those values pieces? And then how do I check those in other areas of life, whether it be personally, professionally, or otherwise? Because I think when there's a disconnect, that's when the mental health struggles come in or the like feeling stuck or losing that spark or the edge. It's like, oh no, because it's a piece of me is missing. Well, what is that piece? And then how do we identify doing that more?
So your answer there was, you got to connect with your values. So you figure out what your values are. What is important to you? How did you then first, how did you come about that? You know what, I got to figure out what's important to me. Where did
Yeah.
that come from for you? And then what process did you go through to figure that out? Because it's not as easy as just sitting down for a couple hours a night, say, oh, what's important to me? And then you just write down all the things. There's a bit more to it than that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was actually probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, to be
Hmm.
honest. And so I did it. So I have a coach, someone that I've been with for over 5 years that has helped me throughout my journey. So having somebody to like bounce things off of and not believe when I say something that's not aligned with how this person knows me and sees me, to have somebody be able to like call me on it who's unbiased, right? Because it's not my family, it's not a colleague, it's not a friend. It's like this, their only version of success is how I define my own success. So having somebody else, like that was the single best investment I've ever made in my life. Like it's like because it's touched every area. So that number one, and how did I start doing it? Recognizing at the end of a year in sport for me personally, I got depressed and I was like, I need to do something different. Okay, in the off season, I'll figure it out. And then another year went by where I was like depressed again. I'm like, okay, so what is this? So then we went through this process of uncovering values, and for me, it was like a twofold part of an achievement list, which sounds, oh, that'd be really easy, especially for people who have lots of achievements. Now, achievements we're most proud of. So, in the course of my life, what are the things that I'm most proud of having done, and why? And there's a lot more to it, but that was a massive eye opener for me when I did it. Because again, I'm somebody I call myself a super high achiever. Like everything I've ever wanted in life, I go out and get. I have like this very big external accomplishment list. And I thought, oh, this would be so easy. And sitting down and be like, no, what am I actually proud of? Like, what do I want my kids to talk about me or some person on the street? How do I want them to know who I am? Like, what do I want my real impact to be? Was incredibly hard. It took me hours and hours to really sit and chew through it. And so taking that, and then I wrote a eulogy, which is something that people do, like for myself. Again, and it was written from the voice of my daughter, who's about to be 7. So she's delivering it whenever that day comes. What do I want her to say about me? And then taking those two things and being able to tease out what are the patterns, right? What are the commonalities here between these things that have happened in my life that I'm proud of, and who I'd like to be when my time comes. And then being able to connect the dots, right? Of like, oh, okay, these things keep coming up for me across the board. There's probably something there. And then thinking about it and then taking another pass at it of like, okay, is there something there? And then working with my coach to have another set of eyes. What do you see from this? And what do you see? And then so then that's how I got to my 5 C's.
Hmm. I'm not going to ask you what your 5 C's are, by the way. I can probably guess if you've told two of us, you've told us two, and I could probably guess at least one more, but That's for maybe another conversation for another
Sounds
day.
good.
And people have to do their own work and figure out what their five C's are or their variation of those five C's. Maybe somebody listening to this has five B's or five D's.
Exactly.
It's I find it really funny that they all start with C.
Yeah. And
What a
those are mine,
coincidence!
right?
Another C.
Yeah.
Um, anyways, let's zoom out a little bit. It's
Yeah.
you're helping us out with the Altus Speed Summit in a couple months or in a few weeks now. What is it? 6 weeks probably about there. So let's talk a little bit about education, and we're kind of talking about that anyway, right? Where
Yeah.
this ongoing sort of learning process, and that could be internal or external or what have you. What does it mean to you? Like, what does education really mean to you? Not as a system, but,
Yeah.
as a process, where do you sit within this?
Yeah. So education is a tough one for me because I never really identified as like smart my whole life. That I was like, oh, okay, I'm not really smart. I have a brother that like went to Harvard. So I'm like, okay, that's a very smart person.
Mm,
So for me, when I think about education, I think about like impact. Like, how is this affecting what I'm doing? Whether that be I need to learn a skill for a job, or I'm really curious, so I just want to like explore curiosity. And so for me, education is like, what's the impact of it? Why are we doing this, and what's going to come from this? What is the purpose and motivation for this task, this thing that we're doing? Going to college, taking a seminar, any of them. Like, why do I need to do this? And then that informs to me what happens with it.
hmm. Um, I mean, you've worked in elite sport, elite environments. You've talked about that, but you've also spent a lot of time sort of thinking deeply about yourself and what's important to you, how you grow, and probably, I'm assuming, how coaches grow.
Yeah.
Um, you've held other education, quote unquote, events in the past where, probably for a reason, I'm assuming, where has traditional, and you can define that however you like, education served you, and where has it fallen short? And then by extension, where do you feel like traditional education serves us as a community slash industry, and where do you feel like it's fallen short?
Yeah, I mean, I think it serves really well in the like knowledge acquisition phase, right? Like when I get into the field, I'm like, okay, great. I don't know anything about training anybody. Like, what are people saying? What are people doing? Like, that's to me the reading tons of books, listening to podcasts around like the acquisition phase to me is really blends really well to like a traditional, again, going to college, doing lectures, like reflecting on papers, like that operates really, really well. Where it didn't serve as much as like, again, most people will experience this like you get a job and you're like, great, the theory behind periodization is wonderful until you get a psycho head coach, who's like, yeah, that's cute. We're not doing that. And you're like, oh, wait, now what? Right. And so the applied version, I think, is where it doesn't do as well in these really messy team cultures where it's not pretty, comfortable, convenient. Um, can you still hear me all right? Is it lagging? Yeah.
No, no, I got you.
Okay, cool. And then what was the second part of your question? Non-traditional, what does it do well?
Yeah, I guess where has it served us? Where has it served you? And where has it not?
Yeah.
Where
Uh,
does it fall short? And because I'm assuming you feel like it maybe doesn't fall short. It just, all right, there's a next step. We have to continue learning and continue educating ourselves. And traditional sort of university college life has kind of gone and finished. And we move on to different things, whether those are seminars or in-person events or online education or mentorship or what have you, right? So it's,
yeah.
I guess, yeah, the question would be, you've said how it kind of serves us as a community. Where does it
Yeah.
fall down? And then, how have you looked at maybe ways in which you can now, and do you feel like you have a responsibility for this, by the way, to help younger coaches with their growth and with their, sort of the development through their own careers?
Yeah. I mean, the definitely falling short is I think the rigidity piece to it, right? Like when following a very specific path or track, lens like, okay, this is how it's done. And when I was younger or either less confident or less skilled, like, okay, this is how I do it. I'll just do it this way. And then when that doesn't happen, which is like this again, working in for a team right away, like, oh, well, now what do I do? How do I deal with a change where I wasn't prepared for this change, right? So that like adaptability piece, I don't think it helps breed adaptability, a traditional education, which is to me one of the most crucial skills working in with people and
Mm.
humans and in teams. So I think that's where I found it falling short of like building rigidity in people to say, okay, I've literally memorized all of these progressions and I know how this operates. But when it doesn't operate that way, then it turns into a argument, a fight, power dynamic struggle. And rather than, to me, a more cooperative, adaptable space of like what actually matters most with what I'm trying to accomplish, and is there another way that is not attached to my ego for me to get there? And I think soccer was a huge gift in that, given that it's such a global sport, so many different cultures apply performance principles based off of whether it's in Asia or Scandinavia or Africa or America or the Caribbean, or Europe or anywhere, that like we're actually trying to do the same thing and they use different exercises, different equipment.
Yeah.
And it's like my ego could say, no, this is how I do it. And then I'm like, how am I going to tell this incredibly talented player that their way is incorrect? And so soccer is so beautiful because there's 1,000 ways to do it. And so non-traditional education, building more of that, again, those soft skills, adaptability, the opportunity to be flexible and pliable to what's needed to get the job done, right? To be effective, is to me an area of growth, and why I feel the responsibility of hosting seminars and putting together other people who can share and build some of those skills with the next generation of coaches. So it's not the same arguments every week. It's like, because again, science matters, right? Process matters undeniably. And also, it needs to be blended in a more cooperative way. And then I think that's the undefined space, right? The space where we get to create it together.
I really like the analogy of soccer there, by the way. And soccer, the players coming from so many different backgrounds, working with people who do things in so many different ways, and how that can build an adaptability in your work. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that people who work in soccer can get. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, awesome that you picked that out of your time in soccer. How in your mind, like, because there is, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. How should a young coach today think about building like their career in this? Not it's not just getting a job, but like developing their craft. Like what do you feel like what would you do? You're coming in now, or as you are now, and maybe on the other side of it,
Yeah.
you're mentoring younger coaches. Right? It's not just this job, it's not like if you're really interested in being good at this, then what does that look like for you? It's not just a job. It's how do you
Yeah.
build a career out of this? How do you develop this craft, as I say? So
Yeah.
what advice do you have for those people?
I think the advice or reflections that I have around that are like really around self-awareness. Like, what are my unique skills and how do I take my strengths to be super strengths? And to me, it was no different working with athletes or young coaches, like people who are really interested in specific topics, or they can lean into like just build trust with athletes or staff people really quickly. That's a skill. Or like are really bright, can synthesize information and translate it to other audiences really well. Like that's a skill, like to lean into those pieces, because yeah, the authenticity. Like people read up, like can pick up on it right away in team environments. And it's like, okay, if you're trying to be something you're not, I don't trust that. Versus like young folks, like of course you need to know like a baseline. There has to be a baseline of knowledge. So if someone asks questions, you can answer it with a level of, expertise, even at a first job, right? Like, because these are people's livelihoods, careers that are there entrusting to us. So there's for sure a massive responsibility. That's like the baseline is, know what you're doing. But then to me, they're like separating, like, this is what I'm really good at and what I really like. And being able to redefine roles of, again, if you're on the performance and you also really love like nutrition and what comes with the cultural side of eating and teams, like, then redefine that role to fit it a little bit and lean into like, okay, great, how can I apply this in my setting? Like, and so yeah, I just think the young folks, the self-discovery piece is the best asset, not the, like, there will always be someone with a bigger title or who had a better career or went to a bigger school or played at a better team, or like those pieces are so fleeting. And so I don't think that's what defines, like, the people who show up on time and really care and ask questions or like engaged about like their own career development or how it influences things, like that's really exciting. At least when I was around other interns, people, young coaches, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't actually care what school you went to or what team you worked for. If you're like peeling back the layers, if you're curious about what's going on and you say, okay, great, this is how I like to apply it in my setting, or what I'm like, to be able to reflect some of their own strengths, and then yeah, have a baseline of do a really good job at the things that you can control, which was like, again, show up, have a good attitude, be curious, like, but those are human qualities that I think are important regardless of if we just happen to be talking about someone who works in sport. um
Some of those things are you hoping that maybe they come out in the Speed Summit? Like, is that one of the reasons why, obviously you're helping put this thing together? Is that one of the reasons why we're doing this? Is to
yeah.
get that message across to people? And, if so, like, how are we doing that? How are
Yeah.
you doing it? And, what are we doing differently here that maybe other events have not done? And I guess we've answered the why question. Like, why are we doing them differently? Because, many of the traditional ways in which we educate ourselves as a community are not really serving us. So we're trying to do things. All right, let's figure out what the problem is and just do it better.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I know, like, Altus, like, have extremely high expectations of the things that we do, people that we associate with. So like this conference, seminar, it's gonna be different because like that's what's required, right? To a level of intentionality, effort, right? What are the things that we can control as people planning something? Like the amount of time, energy we put into it, like that goes such a long way. That's so much more impactful than like the best presentation ever. The presentations matter, right? But also, if I think about the experience of the person attending from the moment they show up on Friday at 2 o'clock until they leave on Sunday at 2, and what their day is like, how they manage their own energy, what are all the touch points for them, like that requires a ton of time and effort and intentionality. And I'm willing to do that because I love doing that. Like that's to me that I'm an intern and I show up on time at 6 a.m. every day, right? It's like the thing I can control. And so I believe that has such a huge weight in creating really unique and powerful pieces of like the intentionality. What is the experience like from every stakeholder's standpoint, from the presenters to the sponsors to attendees, right? Like, how do we create authentic connections? Because it can happen, and
Mhm.
deep, meaningful connections can happen in a day, no doubt about it. And so we create those, right? It takes time and energy and effort to think about, be reflective on, discuss, work through, but then it absolutely can happen. Right? There's like, and it can happen at a way you could spend no time on this and put together a conference with good presentations, and it's like can be fine, right? But to do better than fine is within our control. And again, like I don't consider myself that smart as or the best coach ever or any of these other like qualifiers. Like, no, I can show up and put in a shift, right? And my shift is think about everybody's experience, what they need, how to tailor it so that folks can get what they need, articulate it, plan it, and then trust that by bringing in other people who share this mentality of like, I want to do a really good job, I want to give back, I want to create, I want a two-way relationship, and trust that when we create it and put them there, it will happen because we've put the time, effort, energy, and got the right people in the room. And then that's when the magic will happen. I don't know exactly what moment it will be and how and who, but knowing that it for sure will happen.
Sean, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Yeah, I can't wait. Chicago in the summer is going to be epic. So,
Sure. Thank you. Well, that was a really rich and thoughtful conversation. I really enjoyed it. Sean's not just organizing this conference for us. He's trying to reshape how we think about learning, mentorship, and what it means to grow in this field, and maybe even redefining what we mean by high performance. It's clear that if we want coaching education to evolve, we need more voices like his. Thanks again to our sponsors, 3x4 Genetics, Stat Sports, 1080 Sprint, Team Builder, and Output Sports for supporting this conversation, all of the conversations in the Altus podcast, as well as the upcoming Speed Summit. We'll see you in Chicago, June 6th, 7th, and 8th. Remember, grab your tickets. Tickets and full details are at altus.world. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.